everybody. Welcome back to Unzipped. Super excited to be making this happen right now. We've been working for a while to finally get you on the show.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So yay, we're finally here.
Yes. Super excited. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So this is Christian, everybody. We've been working together for a long time now, probably going on 2 years now. And your show, being interviewed on your show was one of the ones that I really, really enjoyed. And so
Thank you.
so I've just been really excited to get this going. And Christian and I have some synchronicities just in terms of, what we're doing and ways that we can help each other's people out. And so I'm really excited to kind of just expose him to everybody and let everybody know what you're doing. So thank you again. Thank you again.
As opposed to exposing myself, which would not be, not be appropriate. But this show is called Unzipped. So, I mean,
yes.
anything goes, I suppose.
So why don't you tell us about your show?
Yeah, so I actually have a couple podcasts, but my main show is called Dopamine. It is a mental health support podcast for creative professionals and mainly focused on mental health, but I also help freelancers and entrepreneurs kind of with some personal development stuff. I kind of talk about my personal process. What are the things that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis in terms of managing my energy, managing my mental health, and managing life stuff. I mean, I don't have kids, but we have Molly's kids kind of join us sometimes, and we have to work around life things sometimes. Mm-hmm. We have varying schedules. Those things have effects on our lives, and sometimes it's a challenge to subvert our previous expectations of 9-to-5 day-to-day life. And when we start to do business for ourselves, we kind of think that needs to automatically translate the same way. So I kind of try to help people to subvert that as I'm learning to subvert that myself. I'm not here trying to be the quote unquote expert that hasn't experienced it myself. I'm not the social media guru trying to fix your life dreams. I'm someone that has experienced business struggles since I was basically 14. I grew up in an advertising agency and I've spent all of my life trying to figure this stuff out and trying to help people with my, through my personal lens to understand and connect with their own story. So that's the main focus for that podcast. And then there's two others, which is a Myers-Briggs focused podcast called Super Myers-Briggs Turbo EX, which is a video game sort of pun there. And there's one called Brand Blaster, which is more a deeper dive into the branding and design side of things, not as heavy into the mental health side. So there's some extrapolation that I'm playing with the different shows, but Dopamine is the main thing right now.
I love it. I didn't even know you had that many shows. That's awesome.
I like to keep working. No, I like to keep working. Podcasting is something that is very intuitive to me, and I really love just waking up. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I've got things to say, right? So, that gives me a place to put this bits of information, regardless of where it fits in the different buckets. So I've got these 3 shows that kind of help me give different buckets to the different topics that I have so that they just don't go wasted.
Yeah, I love it. And your Facebook group that is connected to your podcast has been a huge help for me personally. I've gone in there and been like, you guys, I'm dealing with this, help. What do I do? And it's been a huge help for me. So yeah, I love what you have going on. It's really important. I don't think that mental health among entrepreneurs and creatives and, everybody that you're speaking to is spoken about enough. It's not, people are not bringing enough attention to it right now. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's great.
And it's mental health in regards to everyday neurotypical mental health. It's not just ADHD and bipolar disorder and all of that stuff, which is part of the discussion. But of course. I really want it to be something that every freelancer and entrepreneur understands, that being professional is about self-care. I relate it to professional poker players. The difference of being a professional poker player versus an amateur is knowing when to get up and when to take a break, when to get some food, when to manage your bankroll and doing all of those things. So being a professional is really about managing your mental health and having spaces on the internet where we can actually be safe and say all the things that we need to say and work through and plan and all of that stuff. is more important than ever, because we are
Yeah.
constantly our own PR agencies, sharing, even though we feel like we're being vulnerable, there's still some things that we can't say. We can't necessarily post when we're having a mental breakdown, Sometimes we can post afterwards and say like, this is what I've learned from this, as opposed to I'm crying, I'm freaking out, and I'm in tears, everything's falling apart. And there's not always a safe space to put that. So that's what the podcast is for, and what the group is for too.
That's great. I love it.
Fantastic.
So what was it that made you, what was that moment when you were like, I'm going to start a podcast? Like what was that? What made you decide that jumping into that industry was a good idea?
Yeah. So I was living in San Diego for 7 years. I grew up in Philly. And when I was 25, I moved to San Diego, and I lived in San Diego for 7 years. I was basically in a relationship the entire time and married for 2 years. And that relationship was slowly draining me. And I didn't really realize it at the time. I was just finding other outlets, I wasn't finding senses of community. I wasn't really living to my natural strengths. I wasn't having the types of outlets that I would have loved to have in my life. So I started playing with podcasting as a means to creatively express myself and what was going on and all of this stuff. And I started, actually, the first podcast I made was called Zero Laugh Track, which was a comedy podcast meant to help me practice coming up with sort of comedy things amidst not having a laugh track and trying to be funny without the response. And that didn't really work out, but it was like a really good way for me to practice my voice and sort of get a feel for how I wanted to speak, and really get addicted to the form of just like, oh, I could talk for 20 minutes or I can write a script. And that was really like where I learned that I didn't need a script. Like, that's not how I operate. Like having a script, like maybe some prompts, maybe some outlines, maybe some questions, helps. But essentially me having some sort of a script felt stifling. And through that process, I started to learn that being a little bit more free form was part of it. And I eventually I sort of worked my way towards dopamine as a means of personally sharing what was going on in my life as I was winding down my marriage, as that was coming to a completion, and working through a lot of the difficulties of understanding emotional abuse and my own mental health, and going to therapy, and challenges with, I had a job at the time, and managing my mental health in relation to that job and all of that stuff. Like, it was a massive challenge. So it started out really with doing podcasting through an app called Anchor, which is basically, at the time, it was something where you could just do 5-minute segments and then post it. And it was a little bit more community based. But then about 6 months later, I started to rebrand to Dopamine and wanted to become a little bit more of an authority of what I was talking about, and rebranded and started focusing my message, adding maps and models to the conversation, like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram and stuff like that. And really getting into the weeds of what it is that I did for myself. So a lot of it was personal expression and feeling like I had nowhere to put my energy, nowhere to put my voice. So I just put it out into the ether, and it's been connecting with some people, which is really great. And this is how we've led to this moment, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, definitely. God, that's so awesome. It's just such a productive place to direct your energy when you don't know what to do with it. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so fantastic. It's been so helpful for me to connect with people and really not feel alone. That's like, regardless of what it is that you're talking about. I mean, I'm talking about mental health and all those difficult topics, but if you're a person that's like really obsessed with math and you have a math podcast, and then you start learning that there are people that are listening to it and calling in or going to your group and stuff, and you're just like, there are nerds like me, and this is like, so regardless of what that is, as long as you're willing to put your voice out there and like connect with those people, and then have guests on your show or be guests on other people's shows, like, it's an amazing way to build a sense of community by just being yourself. Like, I feel like podcasts are the easiest way for me to be myself. In every other platform, there's much more of a PR voice that I have to kind of work through. But on podcasts, I can be a little bit more informational like emotions come out sometimes. I'm not an overly emotional person. So it's nice to be able to just speak the way I want to speak about the topics I want to speak about. And it's been great. I love it so much.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me more about just kind of some of the things that have come from the podcast that you've had, like relationships, partnerships, anything like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, connecting with you has been really great because not only from having you on the show, but then, every once in a while, like we are making sure that we're kind of keeping up with what's going on.
Yeah.
In vague terms at least, and we're supporting each other. We're both dealing with all sorts of our own personal difficulties, and we can support each other. So I've come across people who have messaged me on Instagram saying like, your podcast has given me a sense of not feeling alone, or I can understand these concepts a little bit better, or I never thought of something this way. And it's just really great to get that kind of feedback. So for me, like getting that feedback from real people who are actually listening and then having a visceral response, like that gives me life. And I love that. So that has led to business opportunities. That's led to all sorts of connections. It was through you that I had, I can't remember his name now because it was so long ago. It was actually a year ago that I recorded an episode with the hypnotist friend of yours. And
Marshall Silver.
Marshall Silver, right. He was really great to talk to, people that I never suspected that I would ever get an opportunity to talk to. And you've been really instrumental in bringing those people to me. So I'm really thankful for that. But also I've connected with Personality Hacker, which is one of my biggest clients these days. They do typology, and their podcast is really great. They get most of their business through podcasting. And we connected over that mutual, the mutual art of podcasting. And then typology, I got to go down to their house, and we stayed for a weekend. And then I did a 5-day event and filmed with them. I was on their podcast, which was like a total personal dream come true. Like I was super excited about it. So having all these connections through podcasting and then refining my voice so that I'm ready for these opportunities has been really, really great. Like the podcast has been the backbone of everything that I've been doing the past 2 years of finding my own personal confidence and having personal, business connections. And I even met Molly through podcasting. Like podcasting has been everything that has.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, podcast has been everything. It really has.
How did you meet Molly through podcasting?
So like I said, there was the app Anchor that we were using. It was Anchor 2.0 at the time, which it was not as focused on. It was kind of podcasting, but it was kind of playing off of radio a little bit. So it was playing off of, your profile was like a station. You were a station. And they had these thing called echoes, which were the equivalent of like retweets, essentially, or shares. So I could be talking about a topic, and then she has a topic she's talking about on her show. And I could be scouring other shows, including hers, and share a segment on my show of what she said on her show. So it's like kind of resharing and all of that stuff. And then you can have people call in and all of that stuff. We got to a point where we started just calling in privately and talking to each other. And then we started having like 8-hour conversations on the phone. We actually, if you go back into my feed, there's like one of the first maybe 20 episodes. There's an episode where it's like an interview with Darling Rage Nation. And that is the first time we ever talked on the phone.
Oh my God, I love that.
And it was recorded publicly. So it was like really fascinating as we were getting to know each other. And even that interview went on for like way too long because we were talking for so long. So then we just started talking. Cute. So we just started talking, privately all the time. And we had like 8-hour conversations. And for both of us, like that's when our life, we're just like, okay, everything's changing, everything's shifting, and we're making choices and all this stuff. So it's been a really big deal. Yeah.
I love that. That is so cool. I had no idea about you guys, and that was that connected. That's awesome.
It's really great.
So if someone's looking to get into the industry, whether they want to start their own or become a guest, do you have any tips for them?
Yeah. I mean, if you go to my my Twitter account, and in the link there's my Twitter is let's go CNote. So shameless plug. There's a link tree in there. And I have a podcasting for absolute beginners course in there, which kind of goes through. It's more of a holistic course. It's not necessarily a specs specific course. It's more about finding your voice and all of that stuff. But
Right.
That's just a quick plug. I mean, essentially like I think if you are trying to start a podcast, I like to use Anchor personally. I mean, if you can record locally, you can go through that whole process and go through an app like Simplecast or Transistor or something like that. You can go through those, but I like Anchor personally because it's really easy. You can do it on your phone. You don't need a microphone. You don't need all this, like, you don't need a crazy setup like I do. I just do it because I'm extra. And, but you don't need all of that. Like, you can get pretty decent quality from a headset like you're using, or, something, or just talking into your phone, depending on the type of phone you have. Right. So using Anchor is like a one-stop shop, I find, for starting a podcast. But holistically, it's more about just taking whatever it is your passion is and working on your messaging and refining it over time. Because it's not like you're going to, first of all, it's not like you're going to have a podcast episode and then suddenly you're going to have everyone knocking at your door. That's just not how it works. I'm 300 episodes into my show and things are kicking down and starting to happen and all of that stuff, right? It takes time.
It's an investment for sure.
It takes time to not only, do enough shows to catch someone's interest, but to also refine your voice, refine your message, figure out what your branding is, and let things kind of emerge over time. So, I mean, if I could give one piece of advice, is like to have patience, because this is going to take time. And you're going to take time to develop your voice, especially if you're like a public speaker and you're trying to start your own podcast as a public speaker. That is a great way for you to practice saying what you need to say without the feedback of someone responding to you. Sometimes you're kind of feeding off the crowd and like, that's great. But sometimes the room is going to be dead and you got to work out, figure out how to still
keep going.
Right. So, I mean, those are kind of, it's such a big, massive topic, right? But I think starting with Anchor is a great way to go. Personally, there are a lot of people who will swear against it, but I think, as long as you can get your voice out there, like, just do it. And that's the point.
The most important thing. Yeah.
Motivation is a myth. Like, it really is. You just have to start creating, and then the motive comes as you're doing it, right?
Right.
It's like getting out of bed in the morning. It's like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed. It's because you're still in bed. You just need to go.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Oh man. So what does the future look like for you? What do you have going on outside? What are you working on?
So right now I'm really trying to solidify myself as a digital producer locally and with anyone that I'm working with. So that includes graphic design, photo, video, and podcast editing. So one of the things, I'm doing a lot of podcast editing to help people do straightforward edits, add kind of beef up the sound quality a little bit, add intros and outros, and sometimes I can sort of co-host with them and stuff like that. So that helps people who are trying to build their own podcast. Graphic design, I mostly do like branding and business cards and stuff like that. And I'm getting involved locally with some people because I have a product that I call Vid60. I actually just recorded a podcast episode about this before we got on together, where I was talking about speculative work versus free work. And the way that I've been getting known locally is by creating a cheap product. I shouldn't say cheap, it's inexpensive. An inexpensive product called Vid60, which is 60 seconds, a 60-second video of 60 minutes of me filming in someone's space. So like an event space or an opening or something like that. A lot of it's been like art galleries and stuff like that, where I help someone to capture the event for 60 minutes. I create a 60-second video and it's $100. So it's an hour of my time to film, an hour of my time to edit, $50 an hour. I'm not cheapening my rate. It's just a way to get in the door. So it's been really helpful for me to do that locally. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing stuff with Personality Hacker, and I'm doing some stuff with, I just got off the phone earlier today with a guy that I'm going to be working 1 or 2 days a week with him on promoting his brand locally as well. He creates like circus equipment and other big things. So he's got like a lot of cool stuff, prototyping, stuff like that. So just doing all sorts of things with all sorts of different clients, trying to do more podcasting because I love it. And I'm trying to make it more of my regular daily routine and trying to do less grunt work. So, and I guess one of the big picture things is also like, I want to move towards traveling more. So with Personality Hacker, they have events in LA and DC. They have one in London in November and Atlanta, and I'm going to be going to all of those. So I'm excited to be
that is awesome.
Traveling a little bit more. I want to do more things that involve that sort of thing, and eventually emerging dopamine as something that I connect with more people on, helping more people on, trying to create a bigger brand around it, products. I have an idea to turn the like Myers-Briggs types into like little buttons or tokens or like logos in a way, and create a product line around that. So I'm kind of playing with that stuff.
Awesome.
So I'm always ideating. I'm always dreaming. I'm always coming up with something else. Cause like, even if you're just having a podcast or you're a freelancer of some kind, like you got to keep reinventing yourself some way, shape or form. Like there was a podcast I listened to not long ago that used the great example of Steve Martin was the biggest comedian in the world for the longest time. And then he backed away and he reinvented himself, as people also know him as someone who's a banjo player in a bluegrass band. And he's really, really good and world class at that. And he reinvented himself. Now he's back into comedy a little bit, but it's like, if you're continuously kind of pushing yourself and trying new things, like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm always trying to make things happen. And Molly thinks it's sexy, which is great. And I love that. And I feel good about myself and confident in that reinvention constantly. So I really love that about myself. And that's kind of where I'm continuing to go.
I love that. And it's so inspiring too. Just on a personal level, you've just really helped me out a lot over like the last year since we did our interview and everything and all the other stuff. So it's really inspiring to watch you just continuously be doing the thing just with everybody else. You know what I mean? It's great. It's awesome. Yeah, you're definitely doing it right.
And I appreciate you, and I admire the ability that you have to make all of these amazing connections. Like, again, I had podcasts that with people I never thought I would have podcast episodes with, like interviews and conversations with, like they've been all amazing to connect with. And I think it's a testament to your taste and your ability to connect with people and building Zippy content and this podcast and continuing to push yourself, especially with like personal things going on and like life gets heavy and there's all sorts of stuff that we're working through. Like, I don't know if anyone said this to you lately, but I'm proud of you for the work that you're doing, and I'm hoping that we can continue to support each other as we go forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And right back at you. We appreciate you working with you too, and just being able to send all of those people to you. And it's been great. So many more years.
Yeah, for sure. Like this is one of those connections, and I encourage anyone listening to look for those connections that you're not just going to get an immediate payoff, because we've had so many times where we've bandied back and forth, like not being able to do shows with each other or schedules changing and stuff. But like, we're not trying to get like an immediate hit off of each other, right? We're trying to just build a long-term relationship. So it's like, hey, you need me for something. Like if something comes up and you need me to fly out and do whatever, I'll do whatever I can in the best possible way that I can.
Yeah.
You need a podcast graphic? I got you, girl. Like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, and same thing. This is a case where you're helping me out to get some publicity for me to kind of help me out, because I've been having some financial struggles. You've got a really great reach. You've got a great podcast, and I've needed the help, and you kind of put me to the front of the line, which I'm so, so grateful for. Thank you. So, those are the relationships that you need to build as a podcaster for those listening, and like just relationships. Like it's overdone and oversaid that relationships are the thing, but it's genuinely connecting with people that you believe in, not just people who are going to get something from you, that you're going to get something from, right? You're people that you trust, that you want to help them, because then you're going to naturally just give them more than you get, and I'm going to give you more, everything that I can, like, in any context, whatever comes up. Right. So, we've built that bond, and I think that is important for anyone to pursue. And Molly's great at that with people too. And we all have a great connection with people, and hope we get to hang out someday and like all of that stuff. So that's the plan.
Definitely. Well, where can everybody find you? How can they connect with you?
So if you want to directly connect with me, I find the easiest way is on Instagram or Twitter. At Let's Go CNote is my CNote, as in CNote. CNote is my nickname. I got it. It was given to me by my best friend in high school. And because I always find a way to make money, I always find a way to make music and, all of that stuff. So
love it.
Notes, Christian, all that stuff. So that's the best way to connect with me directly. If you're still skeptical, you can go to cnote.media and check out my all of my graphic design work and all that stuff. Or if you go to dopeamine.life, that is where the podcast Dopamine is. DOPEAMINE, like, yo, that's dope. So connect with me there. That'd be great.
Well, thank you so much again, like 1,000 thank yous.
Yeah,
I'm so glad we got to do this finally.
Oh, finally, not only just to record something and put it out there, but it's a really great like soul connection moment. Like I love that these things happen, and it kind of gives you fuel for at least the next few days and kind of helps you sort of move forward. And just like, it's one of those moments in time where you remember like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. So you can have great connections, even though like I get intense anxiety around doing guest stuff or being guests on other shows or having guests on my show, but it always turns out amazing. And especially if you're connecting with the right people, it's so good. I love it. So this is like the soul fulfilling stuff. And this is why we exist, people. So let's just keep doing this.
Yes, I love it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this recording. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
Okay, let's see.